In the 1930s, two French anthropologists traveled to a remote plateau in Mali, West Africa, to study a people called the Dogon. What they found there sent them back to Europe with notebooks full of information they did not fully understand. Information about the stars. About a star system in particular, the star Sirius, the brightest star visible in the night sky. The Dogon described Sirius not as one star, but as two. They said it had a companion, a small, dense, invisible star that orbited around it. They described the orbit. They gave its approximate period. They said the companion star was made of the heaviest material in the universe. The problem, for the two anthropologists and for the scientists they later shared this with, was that the Dogon should not have known any of this. Sirius B, the companion star the Dogon described, is invisible to the naked eye. It was not confirmed by Western science until 1862, when a powerful telescope first spotted it. Its density and composition were not understood until the 20th century, and the Dogon had been describing it in their oral tradition for at least several hundred years.
How?
How did a people living on a sandstone plateau in Mali, without telescopes, without observatories, without any of the instruments of modern astronomy, know about an invisible star? That question has never been fully answered. And it is the reason the Dogon are one of the most debated and most fascinating cultures in the world. But here is what I want to tell you today. The Sirius mystery is the thing that made the Dogon famous outside Africa. It is not even close to the most interesting thing about them. The Dogon are an indigenous people living primarily on and around the Bandiagara escarpment in central Mali, a dramatic cliff face of sandstone that stretches for nearly 150 kilometers across the landscape, rising as high as 500 meters in places. Villages cling to the cliff face, tucked into natural shelters and caves, built from the same reddish sandstone as the rock itself, so that from a distance, they are almost impossible to see. There are roughly 400,000 to 800,000 Dogon people today. They are farmers, millet and sorghum primarily, grown in the thin soil at the base of the cliffs and on the plateau above. They keep livestock. They are skilled wood carvers and iron workers. Their art, wooden masks, carved doors, iron jewelry, woven blankets, is collected in museums across Europe and North America and considered among the finest traditional art produced anywhere on the continent. The Bandiagara escarpment itself is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, listed for both its natural beauty and its cultural significance. The landscape is extraordinary. Ancient granaries with thatched cone-shaped roofs, shrines built into rock faces, villages that look like they grew out of the cliff itself rather than being built against it. The Dogon chose this difficult, dramatic landscape deliberately. Oral tradition says they moved to the escarpment to escape forced conversion to Islam by the Mali Empire, retreating to terrain that was difficult to reach and therefore difficult to conquer. The cliffs became their protection. And in those cliffs, over centuries, they built a civilization. To understand the Dogon, you have to understand Alma. Because Alma, their supreme creator deity, is the starting point for everything. The universe, the earth, human beings, the stars, the social structure, the agricultural calendar, the ceremonies, the art, all of it flows from the Dogon's understanding of Alma and what Alma created. In Dogon cosmology, Alma created the universe from a single seed, a cosmic egg that contained within it everything that would ever exist. From that egg came twin beings called the Namo, water spirits, half human and half fish, who became the ancestors of humanity and the source of all knowledge.
Now,
here is where it gets interesting. The Namo, in Dogon belief, did not come from Earth. They came from the sky, from the Sirius star system specifically. They descended to Earth in an ark, described in Dogon oral tradition as a vessel that came down spinning, touching the ground and sending up a great wind of dust. Some people hear this and immediately reach for the ancient aliens' explanation that the Dogon's astronomical knowledge came from extraterrestrial visitors. That is a narrative that has been attached to the Dogon for decades and that serious anthropologists and astronomers strongly reject. The Dogon's knowledge almost certainly has more grounded explanations, which we will come to. But the cosmology itself, the idea that knowledge came from the stars, that the Namo brought wisdom from Sirius, that the universe began in a single seed and expanded outward, is sophisticated and internally consistent in ways that reward serious study rather than dismissal. The Dogon have a concept called the granary of the Master of Pure Earth, a model of the universe that describes the structure of reality from the cosmic level down to the human body. Everything is connected in this model. The shape of a Dogon village mirrors the shape of a human body. The layout of a house mirrors the shape of a person lying down. The cosmos, the community, the body, all reflections of the same structure, all governed by the same principles. This is not primitive thinking. It is a sophisticated philosophical system that took centuries to develop and that encodes an enormous amount of observational knowledge about the natural world. Now, let us get back to the stars, because we owe it a proper examination. The two anthropologists, Marcel Grial and Germain Dieterlen, worked with the Dogon from the 1930s onward. In 1965, after Grial's death, Dieterlen published a detailed account of what they had learned about Dogon astronomical knowledge. The key claims were these. The Dogon knew that Sirius was not one star but two. They called the companion star Ptolo, the smallest and heaviest thing in the world. They said it was made of a material far denser than anything on Earth. They described its orbit around Sirius as taking approximately 50 years. And they had a ceremony, the Sigüe ceremony, held every 60 years that was connected to the Sirius system and to their broader cosmic beliefs. Sirius B, the companion star, is a white dwarf. White dwarfs are extraordinarily dense. A teaspoon of white dwarf material weighs approximately 15 tons. The orbital period of Sirius B around Sirius A is approximately 50 years. The Dogon description matches the astronomical facts in ways that are genuinely difficult to explain through coincidence. So how did they know? The most commonly offered explanation among skeptical researchers is contamination. The idea that the Dogon learned these details from Western visitors before Grial and Dieterlen arrived, and that the anthropologists then recorded it as ancient traditional knowledge without realizing its recent origin. European missionaries, traders, and colonial administrators had been in contact with peoples of the Mali region for generations before the 1930s. Amateur astronomers, educated travelers, people who read popular science, any of them could have shared the knowledge of Sirius B with Dogon informants. This is a serious argument, and it cannot be dismissed. The contamination theory is plausible, and some researchers who have revisited the Dogon astronomical claims have found inconsistencies that support it, different Dogon communities giving different details, for example, which suggests the knowledge is not as uniformly ancient as the original accounts implied. But it also does not fully close the question. The Sigüe ceremony, the 60-year cycle connected to the Sirius system, has been documented over multiple iterations and appears to predate any realistic contact with Western astronomy. The deeper philosophical framework connecting Sirius to Dogon cosmology is woven through their entire belief system in ways that look less like recent addition and more like deep structure. The honest answer is that we do not know for certain. The Sirius mystery remains genuinely mysterious. Not because the ancient aliens hypothesis is credible, it is not, but because the contamination hypothesis, while plausible, also has gaps. What we do know is that the Dogon are extraordinary observers of the sky. They track stars. They have names for planets. They recognize the Milky Way as a spiral of stars. They understand that the moon reflects the sun's light. They have a sophisticated lunar and solar calendar that governs their agricultural and ceremonial life. Whatever the ultimate explanation for the Sirius knowledge, it grew in a culture that takes the sky seriously as a source of information and meaning. But the Dogon's relationship with the cosmos is not just philosophical. It is performed, and the performances are among the most visually extraordinary in the world. The Dogon are famous for their masks, not as decorations, but as living ritual objects, vessels for spiritual presences that are summoned during ceremonies and that communicate between the world of the living and the world of the ancestors. The most famous is the Kanaga mask, a rectangular wooden structure above the face with a cross-shaped piece above that and another below, creating a shape that represents the connection between the sky above and the earth below, between the divine and the human. Dancers wearing Kanaga masks move in specific patterns, bending, spinning, touching the ground with the mask's lower extension, enacting a cosmological drama that has been performed for centuries. The Siji, the great ceremony held every 60 years, is the most significant Dogon ceremony of all. It commemorates the death of the first ancestor and the transmission of knowledge across generations. Preparations begin years in advance. A special ritual language is taught only to initiates. New masks are carved. The entire community participates in a ceremony that lasts for months and moves from village to village across the escarpment. The last Siji was held in 1967 to 1973. The next one is due around 2027 to 2033. When it happens, it will be one of the most significant cultural events in West Africa, a ceremony that has been held continuously, with no interruption for centuries. The Dogon also hold the Dhamma ceremony, a multi-day event held to free the souls of those who have died since the last Dhamma, allowing them to pass from the world of the living to the world of the ancestors. Masked dancers perform for days. The masks represent different forces and beings, animals, spirits, foreign peoples, cosmic figures. Each dance tells a story. Each story is part of the larger narrative of Dogon cosmology. To watch a Dhamma ceremony is to watch a complete philosophical and theological system being performed, not explained, not written down, but enacted, embodied, made real through movement and sound and the faces of the masks looking out at a world they were carved to address. The Dogon world today is under pressure from several directions simultaneously. Mali has been in political turmoil, 2 military coups in 2020 and 2021, a military government that has expelled French forces and aligned with Russia, and a jihadist insurgency that has spread southward from the Sahel toward the Bandiagra region. The Dogon have been caught in this violence. There have been attacks on Dogon villages by armed groups. There have been counterattacks. Communities that had coexisted uneasily with neighboring Fulani pastoralists for generations have seen those tensions explode into violence in recent years. Tourism, which had been an important income source for Dogon communities near the escarpment, collapsed after Mali's security situation deteriorated. Visitors who once came from across the world to see the cliff villages and the masks stopped coming. The income that had allowed some families to educate their children and invest in their communities disappeared. Climate change is hitting the Sahel hard. The rains are less reliable. The millet harvest is increasingly uncertain. The thin soil of the escarpment, always marginal, is becoming harder to farm. Young people are leaving for Bamako, for Côte d'Ivoire, for destinations unknown, because the life their parents lived is becoming harder to sustain. And the masks are leaving too. Dogon art, carved masks, doors, figures, locks, has been collected by Western museums and private buyers for over a century. Some of it was sold voluntarily. Some of it was taken without consent during the colonial period. Significant pieces of Dogon cultural heritage sit in Paris and New York and London, behind glass in climate-controlled rooms, far from the ceremonies they were made to participate in. There is something that happens when you sit with the Dogon story long enough. You start to realize that the Sirius mystery, the thing that made them famous, is actually a distraction from the deeper mystery. The deeper mystery is this. A people living on a sandstone cliff in Mali, farming millet, carving wood, watching the stars, built a philosophical system so internally consistent, so cosmologically sophisticated, so deeply connected to both the structure of the universe and the structure of daily human life, that anthropologists have spent nearly a century trying to fully document it and have not finished yet. They built that system without universities, without telescopes, without writing. They built it through observation, through ceremony, through the patient transmission of knowledge from elder to initiate, from one generation to the next, across hundreds of years. Whether or not the Dogon knew about Sirius B before Western science confirmed it, and the honest answer is that we're not sure. What they definitely knew was this: that the sky and the earth are connected. That the way a community is organized reflects something true about the structure of the cosmos. That knowledge is not just something you store in your head, but something you enact with your body, your community, your ceremonies. That the universe began in a single seed, and that everything that has grown from that seed, every star, every person, every mask, every dance, is part of the same unfolding story. The Dogon are still on the escarpment. The cliffs are still there. The masks are still being carved by people who know what they are for, even when the world around them is changing faster than any ceremony was designed to address. The next CG is coming. The 60-year cycle turns again. And when it does, the Dogon will do what they have always done. They will look up at Sirius. They will put on the masks. And they will tell the story of how everything began.